Hi folks, from Martyr Square in Beirut. Joe Biden, desperate not to lose the November elections, has come up with what he calls an American peace proposal for the war in Gaza. But it's actually a repackaging of proposals made by actors in the region before. Anyway, the problem is that even in the unlikely event that Israel and Hamas really accept it, it won't work if the overriding condition for any peace process isn't met. Here's what I mean. Behind the death, destruction and suffering in Gaza, as was the case with the death, destruction and suffering inflicted by Hamas on Israelis on October 7th, there is a mindset that needs to change. The mindset I refer to is the one that dictates the actions of the overwhelmingly stronger side, i.e. Israel, and it has four components. First, collective punishment, punishing all Palestinians for what one or more organizations do. Second, believing that Palestinians are a fiction and that they don't exist. Third, attributing every criticism to anti-Semitism. And fourth, thinking that Hamas and other organizations can be permanently defeated with purely military means, and that once that happens, the Palestinian question will just wither away magically. First, collective punishment. The idea is that the blame for Hamas's crimes lies with the Palestinian people because they support them. At the beginning of the war, the Israeli president, Isaac Herzog, articulated one of the most cruel and barbaric rationales that has ever come out of the civilized world for military action against an entire people. The result is more than 115,000 Palestinian victims, either dead or wounded, including 15,000 children who have been killed, and 2/3 of the population of Gaza crammed into about 1/5 of the territory, living in hell. The second factor, Palestinians are a fiction. No. Arabs were living there well before the creation of modern Israel. They are, just like the Israelis, of ancient Semite origin. The notion that one people came first and therefore the other has no right to live there is grotesque. Virtually every single country and community would need to be reshuffled. But it's also actually impossible to determine. In ancient times, long before the Israelis, those lands were inhabited by the Canaanites, a Semitic people from which the Arabs could also be said to partially descend. The Egyptians also controlled those lands long before the Hebrews and the Israelis, who were a branch of the Hebrews, were there. And the Philistines, from which the name Palestine probably comes, were present too well before the Israelis took Jerusalem in the 10th century BC. To make matters even more complicated, the Phoenicians, the ancestors of part of the Lebanese population here, were also present in northern Israel almost 4,000 years ago. And there are references to the Arab language spoken by a nomadic people who were also in that area from almost 3,000 years ago. In modern times, when the Jews began to migrate to Palestine in larger numbers after World War I, the Arabs inhabited those lands. Whether they had a national consciousness as Palestinians or not is totally irrelevant to today's problem, because the right of people to live and to be free and to own property does not depend on wanting a national state. Eventually, that national consciousness did emerge, partly out of necessity given the hostility Palestinians face, not just from the Israelis, but also, it has to be said, from other Arab states. Was this not the case of the Israeli national consciousness too? Zionism emerged in the 19th century largely as a response to anti-Semitism in Russia and Eastern Europe and the West, and for a long time, many Jews were against the idea of creating a Jewish state in the Holy Land. Eventually, a national consciousness emerged, and today the Israeli nation state is a reality. It's recognized the world over, it's recognized by many Arabs, and all Palestinians would do well to recognize it if a peaceful solution is ever to be found. The third factor, attributing to anti-Semitism every criticism of Israel or every defense of the right of Palestinians to live and be free, trivializes and banalizes the horrors of the Holocaust caused by real anti-Semites, and before Nazism by centuries of pogroms and the persecution of the Jews that, as I said, largely explains the emergence of Zionism in the late 19th century. Finally, the fourth factor, the idea that there is a military solution, runs against the lessons from history, even against the evidence in Gaza. Netanyahu, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, who announced at the beginning that there would be no water, electricity, or food for the people of Gaza, and those extremist nutcases, particularly two government ministers, who push for the military annihilation of the Palestinians, have been promising an imminent, definitive victory that has not come. And now they admit it will take many, many more months. Even if they took out every member of Hamas in Gaza, Hamas will re-emerge under that name or another one. Did the might of the US military get rid of the Taliban who are back in power in Afghanistan today? Did the might of the US military that got rid of Saddam Hussein prevent the emergence of Shiite allies of Iran in today's Iraq? No. Some problems are too complex for military solutions. Wars have unintended consequences, and when there are legitimate grievances, such as the one Palestinians harbor, getting rid of one enemy does not prevent the emergence of new ones. Until Israel changes the mindset informed by these four factors, as many Israelis themselves, by the way, are having the courage to say today, the violent fanatics among the Palestinian community will not be marginalized, and there will be no peace or justice.